fun, and I'm looking forward to talking to you for a few minutes here.
Great.
You are Starr Long, very famous for many pursuits in the past, and your current project is Shroud of the Avatar. Would you like to tell me a bit about it?
Yeah, I'd love to. Shroud of the Avatar is a project that is the brainchild of the Portalarium team, which is led by Richard Garriott, who some of you may know from the Ultima series. He and I worked on a project called Ultima Online together, which is directly responsible for the birth of Stratics, which we're celebrating
Yes.
this in the 16th anniversary. So we go very far back with Stratics, and Shroud of the Avatar is a role-playing game where we hope to marry the single-player narrative elements of the linear Ultima series with the sandbox and multiplayer experiences that we created in Ultima Online.
Sounds really exciting. And this has been under development. I've seen some of your events on Kickstarter. Tell me a bit more about how you are developing your program and funding it.
Great. Shroud of the Avatar is a crowd-funded and crowd-sourced game, so currently the bulk of our funding is coming from the fans through pledges and purchases of virtual goods, and we are also crowdsourcing a lot of the game. So we buy things off the Unity asset store because the project's built in Unity. We also accept direct submissions of art, and we also run a contest periodically for map building. In fact, this weekend is the third of a 4-weekend series called Challenge of the Avatar, where each weekend we do a scene jam, which is kind of an Iron Chef type event for world building, where on Friday we unveil the secret ingredient. The first weekend was Lunar Rift, which is a way to teleport from one place to another in the game. The second weekend was to build an underground area, and this weekend will be revealed at the end of today.
Awesome. Sounds really awesome. Um, you are, I guess, currently developing deeper combat and magic simulations in your game. Would you like to talk a bit about those?
Sure. We've been working feverishly on building out our combat and magic and crafting skill trees.
Mm-hmm.
And as part of that, that requires us to also think about, well, how does combat work, and how does magic work, and how does crafting work, how does character advancement work, all of those things. The current design for advancement is that it starts out pretty traditional in the sense that you get experience points for doing things like making things or fighting enemies or completing quests, and then those experience points build up to levels, and when you reach those levels you get skill points that you can spend on a variety of skills, whether those are combat, magic, or crafting skills. But where we depart is that there are no classes, so there is no fighter or wizard or cleric or paladin. Those don't exist in our game. Instead, we just have an open set of skills and some of those skills have dependencies, so some of the more advanced spells and say the fire magic school require you to learn some base fire magic skills, but other than that, any player can select those skills. So you can create a character that's got a completely custom mix of skills that will be different than the other player has, and you could have someone, or you could focus on a very particular set of things. And we have 9 schools of magic, so they're the traditional elemental schools of air, earth, fire, and water. We have some what we also consider elemental schools, but they're non-traditional elemental schools. So we consider life and magic and death magic elements, and sun and moon are also elements. So there's 8 of those elemental schools, and then in the center is a school of magic called Chaos Magic, which is the most unpredictable magic we have, and my personal favorite, and also my character Dark Star's personal favorite, because those of you who remember Ultima Online, my character Lord Blackthorn represented chaos, and Lord British represented order, and so my character in Shroud of the Arbiter, Dark Starr, is also a devout follower of chaos magic, and so
Sounds
that's the first
awesome.
time I'm releasing that information. And chaos magic, we have this concept of backfires and fizzles, because magic in general has a very high payoff when you're venturing in combat. It's very, very powerful, but it costs a lot, so you have to use reagents to cast all your spells, so you have to make sure you have the reagents on hand. And then the higher and the more powerful the spell is, the more it's going, more focus, and focus is our equivalent of mana, but it applies to both combat and magic. So the higher level spell, the more focus it requires, but it also has a % chance to fail, or in some cases backfire. And chaos magic has very high backfire percentages, which means it can be very unpredictable what will happen. You may think you're about to do a certain thing, like summon a demon, but you may accidentally turn you or one of your party members into a chicken. and and that's all in the playing to the theme of that school. And we tried to make each school of magic have a theme. So chaos, of course, is the most chaotic one, and one of my favorite details in that one is that you learn to summon a demon, and demons are right now probably the most powerful creature type in the game. You learn to summon a demon first, but then the second spell you learn after that is how to control a demon. So you can summon the demon, and then the demon can do whatever the demon wants to do. Which, and remember, it's a chaos demon, so it's gonna pretty much do what it wants, and it may kill your enemies, but it may kill you too. So there's a separate spell now that you have to learn afterwards, which is to control the demon. And so
I love the disconnect. It's great. It's very unpredictable.
And again, we tried to make that every magic school have that a theme. So, for instance, fire magic is not just about, while it's the school that does the most direct damage, it also has the chance to light your targets on fire. So it also, all of its attacks have a damage over time potential too. So that's kind of the theme of fire. Then something like the school of moon magic is about stealth and concealment and being able to see it in the dark. So it's very applicable to people who want to take a stealth type role. Water magic is a blend of both ice magic, so it has a tendency to slow your enemies, but it's also got some healing abilities in like soothing rain is one of the spells in water. And another characteristic that we have is that a lot of the schools allow you to summon elementals, and that's kind of one of the most powerful spells in that school, where once you learn pretty much all the spells in that school, you learn how to summon an elemental that can also use some of those spells from that school. And in the case of water, it's the only elemental school where you can summon two different types of elemental. There's an ice elemental and a water elemental, and the ice elemental is a combative ally, whereas the water elemental is more of a supportive ally. So it'll do things like heals and buffs on you. What are some other things? Death magic is what people would recognize as necromancy. So it's doing things like making corpses explode, animating corpses, and summoning undead. And one of the things I like about one thing we tried to make it a little different is that the idea that the undead that you're summoning they're decayed, right? So they're in the process of decaying. So even once you summon them to do you, they're going to start falling apart pretty much immediately. And so there's an innate spell or skill that you can learn in that magic school, which is mummification, which the idea is that the undead that you're summoning will last longer because you're going to apply mummification techniques to them.
So it
Uh,
preserves them for a bit.
yeah, so they don't
Hmm.
rot as quickly, and that's actually a good segue to the fact that in all of these skill trees we have what we call active skills. So active skills are what you would consider a spell or a special move in combat. It's something that you invoke while you're fighting. Then there are what we call innate skills, and those are skills that you use to amplify the power of a particular school. So, for instance, in the so the mummification spell that I was talking about is a skill in the death magic school that extends the duration that your undead live.
Hmm. How many
And
schools did you say you had of the magic?
there are 9 magic schools,
Okay.
and there are approximately 10 total spells in each school. And it varies from school to school how many of those spells are innate and how many of them are active. And then combat, we currently have 8. We're toying with possibly a 9th. So currently in combat there are 4 offensive schools, so blades, which include swords, daggers, and possibly axes. We have bludgeons, which includes maces and hammers and clubs. There are pole arms, which are spears and halberds, and then we have ranged weapons, which are bows and crossbows. And then we have 4 defensive schools, and that includes light armor, which is cloth and leather. And the characteristics of light armor is you're more about avoiding damage than taking damage. So
Right.
skills in that school are about things like dodging and tumbling and being stealthy and camouflage. And then we have medium armor, which is chain, and then heavy armor, which is plate and splint mail.
So do your crafting classes then support all the combat classes and make the armaments?
Well, they do that and much more. So we have a pretty sophisticated crafting and economic model we're trying to build. And so with crafting, there are basically 3 rings for crafting, and we're actually going to be revealing those today. So the innermost ring is gathering, and so that's the gathering of resources. So that includes things like forestry, so that's going out and chopping trees,
Mm-hmm.
foraging, which is like gathering herbs and reagents, mining, which is digging for ores and gems and minerals, agriculture, which includes the planting and the harvesting of crops, and field dressing, which is taking the corpses of animals and getting meat and skins off of them. So that's the innermost ring, and that's the gathering ring. And then from that, what comes out of that is the refining ring. And then the refining ring is where you take those raw resources and turn them into usable items for the outermost ring, which is production. But going back to the refining ring includes things like smelting. So smelting is where you take the ore that you get from mining and then you turn it into usable elements. So that might be ingots, it might be plates of metal to make armor, it might be wire, it might be sword blanks. It turns out when we were doing all the research for this that which is a lot of fun, and Richard really gets into it.
Oh, yeah.
Is that blacksmiths didn't actually make the sword blanks. The smelters made the sword blanks. And the blacksmith would take those sword blanks and beat them into the swords that we know.
I never realized that was separated out.
I didn't either. And so, and then let's see what else. Oh, then there's milling. So milling is where you take the wood that you get from forestry and you turn it into boards or dowels, and that allows you to make furniture or the hilts or the handles for something like an axe or a bow. And then from there, there's also tanning, which is where you take the hides off animals that you kill and you turn them into leather. There's also textiles, which is where you take items that you either gather, you either forage or you get from agriculture, and you either weave or spin them into cloth or thread.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the refinement ring. That's kind of the middle ring, and then the outer ring is production, and that includes blacksmithing. And blacksmithing is about making armor and weapons mainly, but we also have a pretty sophisticated set of interdependencies between all the production groups too. Because, for instance, and in some cases, carpenters and blacksmiths can make some of the same things, because a lot of weapons, for instance, have wood and metal parts.
Both components.
Yeah, and so there are actual recipes in the crafting that both a carpenter and a blacksmith can make. So, for instance, like an axe, which requires an axe handle, which a carpenter definitely makes, and the axe head that a blacksmith makes, but either one of them can assemble that into an axe.
Mm-hmm.
Then, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And then we have so then that leads to carpentry. So carpentry does some weapon making, but also does a lot of things like furniture. So all of the chairs and tables and shelves and all those things made out of wood, the carpenters will make. Any of those that require nails require you to work with the blacksmith, because you'll need nails from them. Then there's tailoring. Tailoring is about making clothing, but also things like blankets and tapestries and quilts, and also light armor. So tailors make leather and cloth armor.
Mm-hmm.
So blacksmiths only make medium and heavy armor. Then we have cooking. That's going to allow you to make all sorts of different, not only foods, but beverages as well. So there's a whole fermenting section of the cooking crafting, which includes wine and beer and spirits, but also cheese, because those are all fermenting processes.
Yes.
Right. And then there is alchemy. So alchemy is creating potions, enchantments, and what's the third thing? Medicine. Mm-hmm. So those are the three things that wait, no, it's potions, enchantments, and hold on. Now I gotta look at the tree. Probably. I just made these skill trees, and I should know these by heart.
Oh. Well,
but there's a gazillion of these skills. So hold on. So alchemy. Oh, sorry. It's potions, enchantments, and poisons.
Poisons. Okay, that refines it.
Yes. And speaking of enchantments, one of the things I was mentioning earlier that all spells require reagents.
Yes, I was going to ask about that.
And so if you run out of reagents during a fight, that could be bad. So
Very.
One of the things we allow you to do is to enchant items. But enchanting things actually also requires reagents, but it allows you to store those spells on an item. So, for instance, wands and staves for magic users, you can charge them up with a spell, but each charge requires the same set of reagents that you would need to cast that spell, but you can store them up with that item. And that's how enchantments are going to work, and that's one of the roles of alchemists.
Yeah, so your alchemists and your magic casting people will be working very closely together, won't they?
Yes, and because we wanted, in a lot of traditional crafting systems, they really focus on, for adventuring, they focus on kind of armor and weapons, and maybe they do some potions, and maybe a little bit of enchantment, but we really wanted just like there would be a dependency for both creation and repair because items wear down. With the blacksmiths and the tailors, we also wanted that same sort of relationship between the magic users and the alchemist.
Now, I take it it won't be possible for one particular character to do all of these very various things. Are there limitations put in the number of skills that you can put into a character?
There is. We have not defined exactly what those limits are. The goal, we would, because it's really fun to have a lot of skills at your disposal, and because uh, we're going to have a system that is going to encourage that. We want you to have a lot of them, but not all of them. So, we don't know what that number is. Maybe it's half. Maybe you can have half of the skills.
Mm-hmm.
But again, please, no one hold me to that number because we really don't know yet. But we want you to have a lot of them, but not all of
Mm-hmm. Uh, the um, the limitations are interesting to me because that will help define a community, I think, in a big way, won't it? Uh,
them.
that
Absolutely.
so I'll be looking forward to hearing more about that later on. As far as magic casting goes, will there be reagents growing around the universe of Shroud of the Avatar? Will there be particular areas that they'll need to go find this in order to cast their spells, or will you be digging things up?
Great question. So reagents will, depending on what the reagent is, they can be found in various places. Some reagents are plants, but some are
Mm-hmm.
minerals. So
Mm-hmm.
some can be gathered, like herbs and things like that. But some are minerals, so salt, which actually requires miners to find. There will be stocks of those in shops in the towns and villages and cities, but they also can be harvested or mined in whatever the case, the particular reagent is, by the players. And it's going to
Mm-hmm.
be far more economical to either do it yourself or get it from another player. And
Mm-hmm.
we're trying to push, at least in the multiplayer, if you're playing in multiplayer, we're trying to push a lot of that uh, finding of items and what are the best items and what are the best resources to the players versus the game. So, for instance, when you're playing in multiplayer, crafted items are always the most powerful items.
Mm-hmm.
So, player made items will always be the most powerful things in the game when you're playing in multiplayer.
Crafters will be very happy to hear that.
Yes. So unlike many games where you're constantly playing this, well, I'm never quite as good as the item that I can find on the creature.
Mm-hmm.
Very different. We're going to make the best items are player-made items.
Mm-hmm. I've been very curious about asking about some of your housing. I read that you all had researched the land rush in Oklahoma as
Yes.
part of your design for how to roll out your housing. And I spent my teen years living about a mile south of where that boomer started in Oklahoma,
Oh
and
wow.
it's given me very intense images in my mind of what your land rush is going to look like in Shroud of the Avatar.
Yeah.
You want to tell me a little bit more about just maybe a little bit about the housing, and will it store the magic ingredients? Will you have like chests that you can put your reagents in order to save up a stock for what you're going to do with the other stuff?
Yeah. So starting at the highest level, one of the things we're doing with housing and Shroud is more like it was in Ultima Online, where there is a finite amount of space for people to have houses in, versus instancing out as many houses as we quote need. There's
Mm-hmm.
there's a there is a finite number, and when you're playing in multiplayer, that finite number is a universal number, not a per server number, because we're not doing shards. So there is a universal finite number of housing lots in the game, and they come in three sizes. And each size is twice the size of the previous one. And there's village, town, and city level lots.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, one of the perks, one of the main perks of being a backer is that you are guaranteed a lot in the game. So now you're not guaranteed a particular lot, so you're going to have to. So what you get instead, the first thing you do is you buy a lot deed, and so that deed allows you to go claim a piece of land, a lot in the game. But you have to go use that lot deed on a lot. So just because you have the lot deed doesn't guarantee you a particular place. You have to go find where you want to live and claim that as your own. And
Okay.
and like you said, there will be other people racing to do the same thing. And
Yes.
we're going to be letting people in based on the level of support they provide the project. So those who have supported us at the highest levels, they get in first, and then they'll have a window of time. We're not sure how long. It may be a few days, it may be a week, where they have a certain amount of time to go select what piece of land. Then we'll let the next level in, and then the next level, and the next level, leading up into the quote commercial launch of the project at the end of next year, and that's when we'll let the general public in, and they can start earning money to buy their lots as well, if there are any left by that point, because we're not only are we selling them to backers, but you can also buy them directly through our add-on store.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we anticipate there will be a lot of contention over who gets what lot, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that there will be a thriving secondary market, a real estate market,
Yes.
with the players, because players can sell their lot deeds to each other, so that they can trade those spaces amongst each other, and so we think that will be a very thriving market.
Yes. I sense inflation in the works.
Yeah, and we think that there are going to be people, and we know, and for a fact actually, that some people are viewing their purchase of the lot as an investment that they can
Mm-hmm.
earn big pile of in-game cash for
Yeah,
selling it later. So.
I can see that. So, uh,
Oh, I didn't answer your question about what
the,
you can do with the house.
well,
So,
I'm just wondering if that will help support reagent storage and things like that for people and give them a distinct advantage.
well, houses have a lot of several purposes. There's the sort of surface value of, it's kind of a status symbol of like, look at my, because once you have your lot, then you can decide what kind of house you want to place on that lot. And the houses come in three sizes. So there's village size houses, town size houses, and city size houses. And the a village size house can fit on any lot. A town size house can fit on town or city lots, and then a city size house can only fit on city lots. And city size houses are huge. In fact, we think that they may be some of the largest player-owned structures in a virtual world ever.
Oh, goodness.
We're about to reveal a Lord of the Manor house this week, and it's unbelievably big. Uh, that's an example house for our highest level backer, so it should be big. But anyway, so there's a status symbol associated with it. Then there's the decorative ability of it. So you can decorate the house however you want. You can place whatever things you want on it. Then there's the practical aspect of like using it as a place for storage, because each size house and lot provides a certain level of storage. There's a certain amount of storage type items like chests and shelves and barrels that you can place on, and that increases based on the size of the lot and the size of the house you have. There's also basements, so you can expand your lot underground by buying up to 5-story basements below ground. That also
Wow.
includes storage. And then you can use the house and or your lot for commerce. So you can set up NPC vendors to sell your goods that you're making or gathering to other players. And so, yeah, for the crafting and commerce side of things, having a house is very advantageous. We do have other storage options for players who are unable to have a house or lot in the form of a bank. So there will be a bank vault. But definitely houses and lots will be greatly improve your ability to conduct commerce. But one of the ways to offset the challenge of having a house or a lot is we allow group ownership of houses and lots. So there's two levels of that. One is you can declare other players your kindred, your kin.
Mm-hmm.
If they're your kin, they then have the same rights of storage and decoration that you do on the property. So you can use that kindred functionality for role play in the sense of this is my family, or you can use commerce in the sense that we're running this business together. Like a miner and a smith and a smelter all may decide, hey, let's let's buy a building together that we can be our own sort of self-sustaining loop that we can then sell goods to other players. And yeah, so that's the basic description of that.
Okay. Is there anything else that you would like to cover regarding the magic side or the combat side?
Sure. One of the most controversial things we've talked about combat in our game is that we are experimenting with a more randomized presentation of the spells and skills that you can use during combat, much like you would see in a card game, where instead of having constant access to all these spells and skills, we're trying to introduce a little bit more chaos, which again I'm a big fan of, into those combat scenarios which is we feel more indicative of what being in combat was really like, where you don't in the heat of combat you don't necessarily remember everything perfectly.
Right.
You're just trying to survive, and so you're just trying to do the things that you practiced and learned. But there's the Sun Tzu Art of War quote, which is "No plan survives contact with the enemy."
Right.
And so we wanted to try and capture that, and that's the beauty of kind of the randomized card dealing kind of mechanics, where you may know fireball and heal and a spin, whirling sword attack, but they may not. But the way they present themselves is going to be random during combat, and we think that it's going to reduce the sort of very predictable. Okay, when I go into combat, I hit 1, then 3, then 5, then 2. A lot of combat with shortcut bars and skills has become you just memorize a sequence, and you just repeat that sequence over, or you memorize like 3 or 4 sequences. Mm-hmm. Now we're going to offset that randomness with your ability to build decks or custom lists of spells, where you can quote stack the deck, and you can say, well, I really want fireball to appear a lot, so I'm going to learn more than one fireball. So I'm going to learn that spell up to 5 times, and I'm going to build a deck that has all 5 of the fireballs in it. So I'm increasing the chance that fireball is going to show up during combat.
Okay.
And that it is very different. We've been accused of doing different for different sake. We do, but we really do feel like it makes it a little more exciting. It makes it a little more unpredictable, and I think especially and it also it introduces the concept of a second chance in combat, where you may think all hope is lost, and then that one powerful spell that you need shows up. And so we think that in multiplayer that's going to be especially exciting in PvP, where a lot of PvP in most games devolves into I'm just going to dominate. Like one player will get the upper hand, and then they will just dominate, and there's no hope that you'll ever come back. Mm-hmm. Whereas in a system where things are a little bit more randomized, there's always that chance that you may come back from what seems like defeat. And so we think it makes it a little more exciting, but it is very different, and it will take a lot of use to. And we are going into it with eyes wide open. If it's not fun and it's horrible and everyone hates it, we could retreat. We could retreat to a more traditional thing, but I'm holding out hope that it works out and people have fun with it.
Well, having played UO for years, I don't think this would become boring if you're never quite sure of what the outcome is going to be. That's exciting to me.
Good. That's what we hope. We hope it's more exciting than frustrating.
Well, I have really appreciated your time today, and I thank you very much for this time to talk. And I'm looking forward to talking with you again on Sunday.
Sounds great.
And thank you again.
You're welcome.
Bye.